Well, welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon for the NYC Green Relief and Recovery Fund informational webinar for the 2021 Grassroots Grant Round. My name is Mike Mullally, and myself and Becca Cohen, who is not here today, we will be making up the grants team for this grant round. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Sherry Seiner, who is the Partnerships Development Manager at City Parks Foundation. So appreciate Sherry being here. But just wanted to note that throughout the next 3.5 weeks and beyond, the point people for this grant will be myself and Becca. So please feel free to reach out at any time. So real quick, we just wanted to go over Zoom very fast. As we mentioned, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our website. I did mention that we've disabled the chat and people can, people are muted. So for those who might be not used to this format, we're in the Zoom webinar format where you can communicate via us through the Q&A, but people cannot see each other or verbally speak with each other. So a little bit different than the typical Zoom meeting, but people will be muted. And people can ask questions throughout the presentation, but there'll also be some time at the very end to do so. There should be maybe fewer buttons than what you see on this slide, but basically the Q&A is your go-to for any typed or written chat. So feel free to add that in at any time. And if people have, some people already started asking questions, but they want to test it out, feel free to drop anything there now. But as I mentioned, that's there for you throughout the presentation. So I just want to give a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll touch on City Parks Foundation and Partnerships for Parks briefly in terms of as the grant administrator. Then we'll go over what everyone's here for, the Green Relief and Recovery Grant. And then talk about quickly this planning during COVID at this point in time, and then leave some time at the end for questions. One quick note, I'm not sure who's in the audience, but just want to make note that there are 2 tracks to this grant. The nonprofit, or what's labeled as a nonprofit with budgets of organizations above $15,000, and then for groups who have budgets less than $15,000. So just to note that the nonprofit round, or the 15,000 plus round, has already occurred in May, and they're in review right now. So if people fit that bill, or we're hoping to apply for that, that is currently passes at this moment in time. And so we'll just be focusing on the Grassroots grant. But at any point, feel free to reach out with questions at that email address, nycgreenfund@cityparksfoundation.org. So a quick overview of who we are. So City Parks Foundation is a nonprofit organization and the largest programming partner of NYC Parks. On a normal year, we lead I believe programs in about 400 parks, rec centers, and schools in the city, reaching more than 310,000 people through 4 different programming areas. We're most well known for our cultural programming through Summer Stage, the largest outdoor performing festival in NYC, with performances in 18 parks reaching all across 5 boroughs. We also offer the marionette puppetry through the Swedish Cottage in Central Park, and the Traveling Puppet Mobile, which many of you may have experienced. Through our environmental education programs, we lead in school, after school, and summer programs, getting kids out exploring parks, gardens, and their coastline through programs such as Seeds to Trees, Coastal Classroom, Green Girls, and Learning Gardens. We also offer senior fitness and youth sports, including tennis, track and field, soccer, and golf for more than 12,000 people annually. And finally, through Partnerships for Parks, we support a network of 26,000 volunteers who help care for our city's parks, including many of you possibly here today. And the next slide, we just have a photo of some of our programs over the years. So touching on Partnerships for Parks really quickly, we are a joint program of City Parks Foundation and the NYC Parks Department. So we're a public-private partnership. And we support and champion neighborhood volunteers by giving them the tools and that they need to advocate and care for their neighborhood parks and green spaces. And we equip people with skills and tools they need to transform these spaces into dynamic community assets. And here's just an example of some of the many groups that we support. And so Partnerships for Parks provides intensive support to community members through a variety of ways. We provide support through beautification support through It's My Park program. We hold public trainings on getting more involved in their local parks and spaces. We provide intensive staff support. Many of us do in different ways. We have a coaching program that provides one-on-one support for groups. And what we'll talk the majority of today about is we give out small grants. And this is an example of just our recent workshop. Get involved with your park. If any of you are new to Partnerships for Parks, we will be posting this online hopefully pretty soon. That we held last week, so that should go up. So if you're interested in some of the work that we do or get involved in your local park, you can learn more there. And talking about Partnerships for Parks wouldn't be complete without speaking about our outreach program. So as I mentioned, we provide intensive staff support throughout all the boroughs. And the best way to work with us is through your local Partnerships for Parks outreach coordinator. And so Linda, for example, oversees several community districts and is the point person for all of these neighborhoods. So we have people who are your point people all across the city in this way. So you would get in touch with that person if you wanted to kind of get more involved in your park, understand what's like working with the Parks Department, start developing those relationships. Our outreach coordinators and field staff are really important resources. And so we really want to drive home getting people connected there. So we'll definitely be sending out a list of local outreach coordinators in all the boroughs. So if you don't know yours, that's not a problem. Great. So shifting gears to the grant. The NYC Green Relief and Recovery Fund is meant to equitably provide support to nonprofits and community groups of all sizes that provide essential maintenance, stewardship, public programming, and management of parks and open spaces across the 5 boroughs. The intent, that was when it was created last year, was to keep parks, gardens, and open spaces green, clean, and safe. As I'm sure many people experienced, parks were shut down for a couple months, and when they reopened, and people have flooded back to these spaces, managing litter, trash has been a challenge. And so the idea was to support groups of all sizes in managing and maintaining these spaces. It's exciting because this is open to all public spaces, which we'll touch on as well. So not just parks or spaces under the Parks Department. So to really just provide that support has been the focus. A quick overview of our grant last year, just to give you a sense of the scope and how last year went. We gave out a grant from July and it's ending in August for round 1 of the Grassroots grant. We had 174 applications, gave out over $132,000 to about 128 different grantees. You can see the breakdown there between boroughs. Across many parks, gardens, street trees. There are also malls, plazas, and even a group from NYCHA applied. The grant amounts were from $500, $1,000, or $1,500, and they were primarily for stewardship of related service projects and supplies, equipping people with the personal protective equipment and sanitation measures needed to carry out groups' work in parks and gardens and open spaces, or just to distribute to their communities, or just to have equipped in their regular day-to-day work to maintain safety as they're out and about. And everyone's here because we're giving out another round. And so the application deadline is July 21st. Here's a quick timeline of what the next few weeks will look like. We launched the grant last week, and we'll be providing a grant support through leading up till July 20th. Excuse me. So what that looks like is if you have a question about a topic or a project idea, or maybe you're having issues with our grant management portal system, you can reach out and we can talk about it. So you can schedule these with myself or Becca anytime. So we're always available. The deadline will be on Wednesday, July 21st at 12 p.m. noon. So that's a little bit different. We've historically always held our deadlines at 11:59 p.m., but this time it's going to be 12 o'clock noon. So just wanted to make that pretty clear. Groups will be notified in late August, and funding will be distributed by mid-September. And then groups have 1 year to complete their project. So projects must be completed by September 2022. And there'll be an interim check-in to see how things are going 6 months in, and then there'll be a final report required at the end. In a exciting bit of news, I don't know if anyone here has read the guidelines prior to today's presentation, but up until probably about an hour ago, we were giving out grants of 500, 1,000, and 2,000. However, we just received, we're lucky to receive a small additional grant to support our work through this green fund. And so we're now able to we're going to be able to provide grants up to $3,000. So when you apply, there'll be 4 different options: 500, 1,000, 2,000, or $3,000. Who's eligible to apply? Community groups and organizations with budgets up to $15,000 per year. You don't need to be a nonprofit to apply. So that's the beauty of our grants, is that they're meant to support the grassroots community groups. So it could be you and a few other people coming together with an idea. It could definitely range, or maybe it could be more established and have a group bank account, or maybe you are a nonprofit. So it really spans the spectrum, but you don't need to be a nonprofit to apply. So examples of eligible applicants could be groups caring for the local parks, playgrounds, or street trees. There are many community garden groups out there, as well as other groups caring for open spaces like public plazas or bodies of water, or maybe like NYC tenant groups or whatnot. So it can span a wide variety of groups. And what spaces are eligible? So this means any public open space. And we understand that might sound pretty broad, but we're happy to talk about that. But any public open space across the 5 boroughs. So these could be parks or community gardens or any of those other types of spaces. They could have any of the below land managers, or not even ones mentioned here, but this is some examples. New York State parks, New York City parks, National Park Service, maybe the Metropolitan Transit Authority has, I know they oversee some gardens. New York Restoration Project, there's bioswales all across the city that the Department of Environmental Protection supports. There's a lot of community land trusts that support gardens. So it's really a wide variety, and just public open space is meant to be pretty broad. So if you're unclear what that might look like, again, reach out to us and we can chat about it, because we are here. So we want to make sure that people are clear, and if they're eligible or not. Again, pretty broad eligibility guidelines. I know some people did cleanups on their street, for example, or I know NYC properties have playgrounds on them. So all of these are eligible. So just things to keep in mind. So I want to be clear about how funding decisions will be made, or kind of what's the criteria for people. We know that the many neighborhoods were hit hard by the pandemic, and so we are prioritizing those groups who have been hit hard, environmental justice communities or lower income communities. We want to make sure that that still means that anyone can apply, but we just want to give priority to those groups and the groups in those neighborhoods. we want to make sure the project aligns with our priorities. So make sure you read the guidelines, ask questions if you're not sure, and we'll go more into that shortly about like what exactly the grant will be funding for this year. But we want to make sure that the grant is in line. If it's totally something different, then it might not be as high of a priority. So open space stewardship and maintenance is important, as well as health and wellness programming. Again, we'll touch more on that. Is the project feasible? Some people have some really great ideas, but sometimes maybe it's too big for people. They bite more than they can chew. Maybe they're brand new to this work and and they're shooting for the moon and it just doesn't seem possible. Or maybe they need to get certain approvals that the agency that's maybe managed that land won't give. And so I think making sure a project's feasible is important. And also the budget is reasonable. If people are just applying for, I don't know, like putting all their money into like one item that isn't even directly remotely connected to the project, like that might not be a reasonable budget. And we also want to prioritize groups who have that relationship with those relevant, agencies or land managers. So demonstrating that you have a relationship is great, and definitely make note of that in your application. So the types of support for this grant, as I mentioned, stewardship related service projects and supplies. So this could be plants or tools for litter removal, weeding or painting, trash removal. It could be street tree care. I know in gardens, people might buy lumber or tools or compost bins or rainwater barrels or all sorts of things. In addition to holding volunteer events, volunteer refreshments also count toward that. So just things that gather people, help them volunteer, nourish them. So all those are possible. We still are providing space for safety supply needs. I know the dynamics changing out there. People are comfortable with different things, but we definitely want to make that still available. Obviously, pandemic is still real. So people can still apply for personal protective equipment for themselves, for their volunteers, to distribute to their community members. So, PPE, hand sanitizer, all that stuff still qualifies. And what we're doing this round compared to last round that's different is we're broadening our reach a little bit in terms of allowing public programming that supports health and wellness. Again, I know a lot of people have been cooped up over the last year, and we weren't funding programming last year. And I know that was a big desire and need for groups. So, we want to open it back up, and we want to make sure that, we understand that health and wellness is also a broad category, and there's lots of interpretations of what that means. So again, and that's intentional. So you can definitely reach out to us, but here's just some examples. They could be fitness classes, sports, workshops around gardening, nutrition, health fairs. Maybe it's dance events or other types of programming that's supporting mental and physical health. That's why we added a photo in here about chess. That's maybe not quite the same physical activity, but one could argue that there's a strong mental component to that, and maybe that's what they want to do: bring people into the garden space and hold a chess tournament or something. So, and so the money also can go toward some of those events, as well as instructor fees or consultants to help teach or implement some of these programs who are not part of your group. You cannot pay yourself or members of your group, but you can pay outside consultants. And of course, the events must be free and open to the public. Just a quick note about what the grant will not fund. We don't fund individuals. We don't fund materials to be used as a fundraiser or sold for profit. So you can't use the money to purchase t-shirts and then sell those t-shirts for your own benefit. This won't go toward any capital construction improvements, so large scale improvements of any kind. Electioneering or lobbying or litigation will not support, and no overhead costs like rent or general liability, insurance, or utilities. So I know there's a lot of text on this screen, but just wanted to touch on really quickly just some different examples. I know in some of the registration information that people were looking for some examples of what some projects could be. So I just wanted to make note of some things we've funded in the past. So if around stewardship or maintenance or beautification or small scale physical improvements, people have organized biweekly park cleanup and pruning, weeding and litter removal sessions, where we funded grabbers and plants and gloves, masks, water and snacks. One garden group wanted to rehabilitate depleted garden soil to help increase food production. So they asked for compost, materials to build the garden beds, and volunteer supplies as well. Also, again, we've supported ongoing stewardship. So those could be bulbs or plants. We also make note here of intern stipends. So even though you can't pay yourself, as you mentioned, you can pay outside consultants for things. We've also given grants for intern stipends. So if there was, work that, if you had a garden intern, for example, or something like that, you could pay them. We've supported a wide variety of street tree care. So I know street trees are important as well, and people hold their own designated tree stewardship events. So the tools that go along with that, plants, refreshments. People have also built their own tree guards out of wood. You do need a permit for that, but it is more cost effective than buying those metal ones, which tend to be $1,100 or $1,300. So, and it's been a fun community building activity for some people. So just that's a possibility out there. And then last year, when the compost program had shut down, a lot of people had applied to expand their composting in gardens. And so they'd asked for a lot of compost materials and supplies. Around safety related needs, again, we saw people who do mask distribution in their park or garden to the community members, or purchase supplies to help sanitize the space, as playground and fitness equipment. I know some of that might not be as applicable, just to give you a sense of what people use it for in the past. And even though we didn't do it last year, past health and wellness programming, we've supported, basketball tournaments, and what that looks like could be like permit fees. Event insurance is things for that one day. So even though we don't support general liability, which covers the whole year, we can support event insurance for that one day activity. Sports equipment, refreshments, and outreach materials. Things you're going to hold events possibly, and maybe you won't get the word out. So the money can go towards supporting you doing so. People have held fitness sessions in the park, like yoga. And again, what that looks like could be the yoga mats. Maybe you have instructor fees, permit fees. And then also, maybe you want to hold workshops, educate the public on certain things. I know a lot of people have done like compost workshops. Then what does that mean to fund funding? It could be the outreach materials, the instructor fees. Maybe you need to build compost bins. So all these things are possible. And just mixing up with a few visuals real quick. Last year, we gave a grant to a group who, this was the before, and they wanted to do major cleanup and rebuild. So they helped clear the site and use the funds to, you could use it to build the beds, maybe add soil, maybe they bought the picnic tables. So just some different things that different people have done. Another group did a lot of distribution of supplies in their community. And so it's highlighting that here. Also, the image on the left, they partnered with the fire department to talk about fire and safety. And I think that just is another good example of, there's a health and wellness component in that too. So maybe the partnerships you build or groups you bring out to represent or partner with at your events, there could be a component there as well. So just things to keep in mind. And I know people like to hold nutrition or garden workshops or other types of workshops. So those are possible in those spaces. And so material supplies and educators going toward that could be feasible. Here's an example of your basic fitness and movement activity. And as I mentioned, outreach materials, again, for programs and events that you're using the grant for. So maybe you want to create a banner or a couple signs. So just that is like an eligible expense. One change that we've done, we have a new grant portal. So maybe some of you have started applications already, but you can go to this website and you can start your application. You can save it and come back to it at any point in time. It is a new system, so if there's anything that comes up you have issues with, please reach out, and happy to provide that back-end support. But just wanted to note that is a new change for us, which we're really excited about. And hopefully it makes it easier too, in terms of you accessing your old grants with us that you might have access to in the future. So I know that's always been a question. So hopefully that will be, that is available, I think. So that is exciting. So the grant disbursement, so you apply, let's say you receive a grant. One of the questions we ask in the application is around your group status, right? Are you a nonprofit? Do you have your own bank account? Are you just a grassroots community group who has a couple members? And we're seeking to understand how we would administer the funds to you. So if you're a nonprofit, we cut you the check directly. If you have an external fiscal sponsor, so if you're partnering with a nonprofit who is allowing them to use their nonprofit status, or allows you to use a nonprofit status, it's called having an external fiscal sponsor, we could cut the check to them. Maybe you're a community group that has your own bank account, so we can cut money directly to your fund, to your account. We at City Parks Foundation provide long-term fiscal sponsorship. So there's 30 community groups around the city who have that with us, or who we support. So we could drop the money in that account. Or if you have none of these, that's okay. We at City Parks Foundation provide a grant-only account for you if you want, for the duration of the grant. So if you're brand new and you want City Parks Foundation to hold the money, we can, and then you would just access it through us through reimbursement forms or through invoices. And so we could either give, you make a copy of receipt, send it to us, and we pay you back, or maybe you work with a business who sends us an invoice, and we pay them directly. So we can go all into that much later, but just to give you a sense, you have plenty of options in terms of how to access funds, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. So we understand that, again, there's been a lot of planning over the last year in a lot of different instances, and that it's still, we're not out of the pandemic. Things are obviously changing. People, as I mentioned, people are at different comfort levels with things. So we just want to acknowledge that, and just want to highlight a couple additional pieces of information. That as of right now, with state guidelines, fully vaccinated individuals do not need to wear masks or be socially distanced. Unvaccinated children and adults should wear a face covering and practice social distancing. And groups will just in general be expected to seek, all the necessary approvals before completing their projects. I know the Parks Department, as you'll see on the next slide, has their own kind of web page around COVID-19. And so if you do partner with land management agency, in terms of the space that you're on, it would be good to just understand what kind of protocols they might still have at this moment in time. And so, yeah, I know Parks has a web page. It's not coming up at the very moment, but when I send the slides, it has the link where you can go. So that's not a problem. But just in other words, we know people are at different places, so just good to kind of check what's happening. And again, that's why we make space available for people to apply for those materials, to people stay safe and whatnot. But yeah, just as you plan, continue to check in what the local city and state guidelines are. Oh, and one other thing is that there is a new permit system. So if you are doing things in a park, there are one or two, I think, additional elements that they added on due to COVID-19. So just kind of a heads up around that, and you could find more information on the NYC Parks website. So appreciate everyone sticking through that presentation. We have now come to our questions section. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing, we understand that maybe this grant maybe might not be the best fit for you. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. If not, we just want to highlight some other funding opportunities going on right now. If you happen to be a nonprofit, Con Edison is having a grant that's due on October 1st, particularly around environmental stewardship. Our next, the Partnerships for Parks has our next capacity fund grant due on January 2022. So we're almost in July, so it's only 5 months away, not terribly far. And if groups are looking to raise money now, we love pointing people to IOB, which stands for In Our Backyards, where people can crowdfund for any community projects year round. So it's a similar platform to like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, except IOB only supports projects that benefit the community. So, but you can do that immediately and then fundraise through your own network. So if it's more kind of responsive at this moment in time. I think Sherry, we're just off.
Hold on one sec.
No worries. So as people think about their questions, there are a couple frequently asked questions that we just wanted to go over because we know. So as I mentioned, people can start adding their questions to the Q&A and we'll get to them. So, but there are a few quickly FAQs, frequently asked questions that I'll go over that we've come upon. So one, where can I find the application? Well, you can go to this link on the City Parks Foundation website. And as you scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a blue marker that says click here for the application. So I just wanted to provide some wayfinding there. Maybe you're having trouble using the new grants portal. Maybe you've got your password, you have trouble submit. Hopefully none of these things happen, but if you do, you can reach out to us at any time through the email address nycgreenfund@cityparksfoundation.org. Maybe some of you received a grant last year and you're wondering, am I eligible this year? Yes, any group of 2 or more people proposing a project for a public space across New York City is eligible to apply. As I mentioned, the project must align with our guidelines around stewardship and health and wellness programming. For those who did receive a grant last year, if you have not completed it, past grantees must spend down their NYC Green Fund by August 31st and submit a final report to remain eligible. What information does the application ask for? I won't spend too much time on this because you can go to the application and review and come back to it, but I just wanted to highlight now. And we asked for basic applicant information, your contact info, what open space do you support? What is your group structure? What's the history of your work? And kind of partnering with, if there is with like a NYC Parks or Green Thumb or any land management entities. We want to know about your group's mission, your history. What's the connection to that particular public space? We want to know an overview of your project, the who, the what, the when, where is it? Why are you doing it? What's the community that you're serving? What's the need that you're addressing? And there are any challenges that you're facing in meeting those needs. And at the end, an itemized budget and timeline for the work. And then our last frequently asked question, do I need to be an expert grant writer to apply or for my group to receive a grant? Nope, not at all. We don't pass judgment around writing expertise or punctuation or anything like that. I think the most important piece is people communicating their idea around the project proposal and really providing detail around, who are you, who's running it and who is it for? When are you holding it? Why are you doing this? What are you going to do? What are some logistics and plans for that day or multiple days? And where's it going to take place? So again, we really want to emphasize the detail around that thing. But other than that, we don't, we know people of all different levels, and we're not here to pass any judgment on that. Well, it is 1 o'clock. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for joining us. we will close it up here. Thank you, Sherry, for all your help and following up on the answers to the questions via typing. So that was really helpful, and for managing the slides. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, reach out to us at nycgreenfund@cityparksfoundation.org. The deadline is July 21st. We hope this was informative and helpful. And if you have any follow-up questions, please, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll post the recording soon. And you have 3+ weeks to go for the deadline. So you'll definitely be hearing from us, kind of reminding folks about it and whatnot. So thank you again. We'll let you go. Stay cool out there and appreciate all you do in your communities. And don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks all.